It is now years after Death of the Outsider. Arcane said they were leaving the world of Dishonored alone for a while to pursue other ideas and ventures. In E3 2019, they revealed their next project. With a retro-futurist tone is Deathloop, which follows the story of Colt, as he, the player, try to figure out what is going on in the crazy place known as Black Reef. Greetings gamers, my name is Rednalist, and welcome to another episode of the list where we tackle a game that I had never played prior to this video, Deathloop. Deathloop cites a multitude of noir and science fiction films as its inspiration for the tone and setting. As usual, we will start with the story, but because of the fast-paced nature of the game, it's impossible to talk about the background of the game without talking about some of the big plot points. So, if you're here for a spoiler-free review, I'm sorry, this is not the place for you. I'm gonna spill some of the big things right away. Did you click away yet? Yeah? No? Still here? Alright, let's go. The premise of the game is a time loop. Think Edge of Tomorrow or Groundhog Day, where we repeat the same day over and over again with minute changes based on the actions of the protagonist. The catalytic action for this time loop is a mysterious event that happened decades prior, and it set the whole of Black Reef into this crazy mess. The death of a magic being weakened the already thin line between the void and the real world would definitely be a possible culprit of something like that. I wonder if we know any of those. We don't get confirmation of this until the very end of the main story, but yeah, Death of the Outsider is a precursor to Deathloop. The Arcane devs themselves admitted that this is one of the possible futures for the Dishonored story. There are other clues, of course, and we'll dig into those as we go. Let's start, as always, with the game's story, and I hope you brought a notebook for this one because it's a doozy. As with all stories, they start simple enough. The player is put into the eyes of Colt as he gets brutally murdered by another character. As our life fades away, we wake up, presuming that that was all an extremely vivid nightmare. Our character, who at this point doesn't even remember his name, wakes up with a killer hangover, and we get a quest called The Longest Day. As we approach the building behind us, words begin to appear. They tell us to break the loop, whatever that means. We are confused, hurl up our breakfast, and continue. Even more words ask if we remember our name, which of course we do not. A radio host named Frank welcomes us and we find a machine pistol. We seem to know an awful lot about it, and the words floating in the air urge us to practice our shot. Given that we are a pro shooter having just come from Dishonored, we are ready to go. Inside the hut, we find a glowing purple trinket. Here we learn that they are little devices imbued with energy that will amplify skills or abilities. Given that we don't have any, or know what any of that means, the screen does show us some interesting things, but we have more questions than answers. There is a board with some more basic information on people we will come to know and love very soon. Nearby, we also find one of the most broken things in any video game, the hackermajig. We throw away the attached postcard and learn a bit about this device. In short, this thing is awesome. We can use it to commandeer or disable nearby devices, such as sensors, turrets, and doors, and anything with a corresponding antenna, really. As we approach the nearby door, the floating words tell us that we should already know the code. Well, they must be lying because we most certainly do not. Our objective becomes simple: find that code. The words then tell us that our name is Colt. At least they're a little helpful. We make our way through the shallow water, and touching it does seem to do a little bit of damage because it's quite chilly. A voice comes down over the radio, Juliana. She tells the island that they have a new directive: protect the visionaries, kill Colt. Yeah, she's the woman from the intro, and she does not like us. We get a super quick tutorial on stealth kills where we get our new best friend, Machete. We take out the man taking a leak off the side, which according to Colt comes all too easy to him. The enemy vanishes for some reason, and we learned that others will still be able to see this even though there is no corpse. The words encourage us forward, and we approach a large-looking mansion. Here we get another tutorial: how to tag enemies, highlighting them for us. We can also focus on them to learn more specifics. This lets us generally keep tabs on people as we walk around. Taking out the few people near the entrance to the mansion, we are ready for our prodding, and promptly get a call from Juliana. She tells us her name and asks us if we killed those idiots, implying that this is not the first time we have broken into her house. Then she mentions that we are finally back, even though we don't know what that means. She talks cryptically, but then lets us in about the loop. We don't know anything about it, but apparently if we do not break it, she will continually kill us in increasingly violent and painful ways. Honestly, doesn't sound like fun to me. So we agree to break the loop and apologize. We guess that we have dated her in the past, and she tells us to go to the library for our next clue. Pulling the lever, we see that Juliana is on the roof and pulls us up through the floor. Apparently this is not the first time she has done this number. She explains that she is using something called Carnesis to pull us up, and for our attitude, she throws us back to the floor. Taunting us some more, we find out that she has a checklist that shows us our basic movements. We ask the voice in our head for guidance, and the text only tells us, jump off a cliff. Well, with no other options.
Okay, here goes. gotta be shitting me! Are you... Listen, me?
Then we hold ourselves up. Not us, that guy who's also us. Then he tells us that we already know the code. Juliana then kills us so that we can fall to our death. We wake up again at the beach. Again, really hope you're taking notes at home. With our memories of whatever happened before intact, we have a new objective to find the postcard to find the code to the door. And because I'm an idiot, my footage got deleted, so I'll tell you what happened super fast to catch you up on the game. Postcard had the code on the back giving us access to a different location to explore. I decided to go to the complex because I know nothing. Upon arriving in this lovely place, we go to the base in the distance, hearing this weird nerdy guy on the intercom and eventually find a way to this thing. Boom, caught up. Sorry about that. Blame Past Red for needing to use the restroom. From this recording, we learned that Igor, the nerdy guy, founded something called the Aeon program and recruited others as visionaries to study and interact with this time dilation. The others here are solely purposed with protecting the visionaries. Most notably, if the loop is threatened, we need to refer to the LPP. As he's running low on time in the tape, he lets slip that the LPP is at Fristad Rock. The head of security will know how to use the LPP to protect the loop. That makes the LPP our next objective. Whatever it is, it will probably help us break the loop if it's supposed to help us protect the loop. Our next stop is the security offices on Fristad Rock. Juliana taunts us again, asking if what we have learned from our stop at the complex is actually helpful. She asks us if we know who we really are yet, which unfortunately we do not. Pushing our way past the large locked building in the middle, we can head to the security offices on a large pier overlooking the bay, using the hackermajig to let us in. As it turns out, the LPP is not here and has been moved to an apartment in Updam. Our apartment, as a matter of fact. We also get the code to the safe as well as a clue. We made the LPP. We, Colt, are the head of security. Or were head of security? Time loops plus amnesia is a weird thing to think about. With the knowledge that we used to be a big deal, that is likely why people want us dead so badly. Time to go rob our own apartment. To do this, we have to backtrack through the stage back to the tunnels. I won't be saying this every time we do it, but anytime we need to switch locations and time, just assume that that is what we did. Part of this game's mechanic is time of day. All of the different locations are available at 4 different times: morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. Every night, the loop resets and we return again to the beach to start everything all over again. Enemy and stage layout may differ slightly at different times of the day. For example, tides can rise and lower. Buildings can be open and occupied or closed. These factors will also change with our actions. For example, doing something in the morning may change what different locations look like in the afternoon. Makes sense so far, right? It appears that while we are here, someone named Alexis is throwing a massive party, and someone named Frank is going to start a fireworks show over the bay. These are important names and information for later. Add them to your notes. Jumping in through the window of our apartment shows us that it is completely ransacked and the safe already open. Juliana left us a lovely note telling us that she took the LPP herself. Calling her doesn't yield a whole lot, and she tells us that the tunnels have been locked tight. She is invading our area. This is a PvP aspect of this game. Periodically, Juliana will attack us no matter where we are. To escape, we need to either kill her or hack the antenna to open the doors. As this is the first invasion of the game, it's just an AI that comes up and attacks us. She isn't very accurate, and defeating her here lets us escape Updam. No LPP, but a little bit smarter. Future invasions can occur as we play through the game. Some of them, if you have the options toggled, will allow you to play with other players. There's a little bit more about this later in the video, but just keep that in mind. The next loop starts with our priority being finding the LPP, and as expected, our weapons are gone. Cole laments to himself at what is happening to himself and how he wants to break the loop, if at least to stop all this confusing nonsense. We brag to Juliana about killing her last loop and go after our apartment. Heading through Updam earlier in the day shows us that our room is no longer thrown around and the safe is closed. We open it and find a dinky little notebook. Disappointing it isn't a gun, but we start to read anyway. The LPP tells us that in order to destabilize and stop the loop, which has been our plan ever since waking up, we need to kill all of the visionaries. If at the point of reset every night, even a single visionary is alive, the loop will reset. If every single one is dead though, it will end the loop. It also lists the location of each visionary and some small details about them. This is our plan then. Kill all the visionaries in a single loop. At this point, another one of ourselves tells us that it is much harder than it sounds to get them all. We ask ourselves what our plan is, and then we explain that there are thousands of cults. Theoretically, as many as there have been loops, but none of them have been able to do a perfect loop and get every single visionary. We urge ourselves to do better than the rest of us. We bid ourselves farewell and go to Wenji's lab to figure out what residuum is. From the LPP, we know that the lab is at the complex, which makes that our next target. On our way to the complex, Juliana bothers us by reminding us that when we die we lose our weapons, and then continues by naming the process of keeping them between loops through something called Infusion. The research for this is in Wenji's lab. Wenji is an interesting character. Her shtick, in addition to being one of the primary visionary scientists, is that she has found a way to create copies of herself for research to continue at an increased pace. The problem with this is that there are a lot of Wenjis, and on her way to the research we take our first true death. See, Colt's lab allows him to have additional lives per run. Losing all of them sends him back to the beach, as if we had looped naturally with nighttime. Well, because I restarted the day, I no longer needed the LPP, as I have the knowledge in my head. So I took this opportunity to explore one of the other areas, Carl's Bay. It's near the waterfront. It is characterized by large hangars at the end, and an eclectic collection of residents, and shops near the tunnels. As we arrive in this area, we are greeted quickly by a screeching woman named Harriet, the visionary in charge of the area. She calls people from the hangar on the far side, and our quest log gets updated to include finding her location. See, the game lets us pursue each visionary at our own pace, but we do need to eventually go down each of their individual quest lines as the collective main quest. So we have some information on Harriet now. Slight spoiler, but Harriet is only ever available here and now in the entire loop, meaning that in all future loops where we are trying to defeat the visionaries, we always have to start with Harriet. More on her later, as we head back to the complex for a rematch with Wenji. Getting to her is much the same, and once we are there, we use the hackamajig to help us win this battle, as well as asking why we can't have a Colt storm like Wenji can have a Wenji storm. Once all of the Wenjis have met their demise, we have free reign to explore the laboratory. There are two large things of note here: a gun trapped inside a wall protected by a sensitive movement-based laser beam, and Wenji's research. Wenji's nearby audio logs confirm that we betrayed the visionaries, and the research confirms it is possible to carry items, slabs, upgrades, and other things from loop to loop, using something called residuum. For this, we need something called the harvester to get residuum. It's on the body of the last Wenji. Residuum is basically the shimmering pretty stuff left behind by objects and people as it progresses through loops. A sort of reality-based memory, I think. Next, we get in the tube, turn it on, and die. But hey, now we have the ability to harvest residuum, so worth it, I guess. Colt is less than happy about this death, but does still have a weapon, so it looks like it's working. With access to residuum, we can now directly increase our power from loop to loop. Basically, defeating enemies, visionaries, or collecting glowing objects add to the residuum total. Better gear requires increased prices, but we only need to do it once to keep the item forever. Items that need to be infused are labeled orange, and our total residuum is on the top left of our menu when we're looking at all of our gear. When we next leave to figure things out, we taunt Juliana that we can now keep our guns, but she's less than impressed. Apparently, it was one of the first things Wenji came up with. She does, however, say that if we did not have the issues with our memory and could actually remember the world outside the loop, we would not want to go back to it. This ends the tutorial on the game's system for the most part. From here, we know what most of the game has to offer, other than slabs, which we'll talk about a little later. So now the playthrough really opens up, which is exactly how mine went. I started gunning for things I wanted first, and coming straight from Dishonored, I wanted Blink. Enter Charlie. Charlie is one of the visionaries, and he's located in Updam. He's hanging out in a mega arcade of his own design called Conditioned Detainment. There are a ton of henchmen guarding the place, but lucky for us, they're low-level people and easy to pick off. As we approach, we are greeted by a voice from someone named 2-Bit, saying that anyone in the game could be the invader. When we reach the main door, the voice confirms that we have entered the game and are assuming that role. Our quest updates, showing us that Charlie's quest is in fact called Space Invader. Charlie's game is a multi-floored tower with patrols on each. The choice to sneak your way up or to go upstairs guns blazing is entirely up to us. As we climb up, 2-Bit announces our progress floor by floor, whether we are stealthed or not. Charlie is naturally on the top floor, and the Eternalists are role-playing quite heavily. We can learn from them that the game is built around a real rocket, not just a set piece. That means if we were to power it up, as they say, it could burn a lot of people real quick. No matter how you go about it, once we reach the top floor, Charlie shrieks like a little girl and starts running away while all the nearby Eternalists converge on our position. Charlie is in possession of a slab. Each slab has a different ability with corresponding upgrades that we can choose. Charlie's is called Shift, and it does exactly what you think it does. Well, with him in possession of the Shift slab, chasing him can sometimes prove difficult, especially as he retreats to his apartment with traps nearby. Once we catch up to him, though, he doesn't put up much of a fight. 2-Bit laments the death of his master, saying he will adapt the next playthrough. We collect the slab, a massive amount of residuum, and our goal here is complete. Shift is our blink substitute, making this our primary movement option going forward. Unfortunately, there's nothing else for us here, really, so we head back into the tunnels with our victory. Colt then puts together some clues for how we actually need to complete the game. Give it a listen.
There's got to be a way to kill 2 of them at once. Or 3, or 4, or more. No, they can't be that stupid. Well, maybe Alexis.
We take our residuum, infuse shift rune so we can keep it forever, and figure out where we want to go next. Next, we should probably head to the complex to figure out what's going on there. It is very snowy later in the day, and Frank is notably gone from this area, as is the artist from hers. What we do notice is that 2-Bit seems to be present at a nearby transmission post, sending out encouraging messages to the Eternalists. Inside, we can find an audio log, where we learn an Eternalist hacker was attempting to hack 2-Bit. Turns out all you need are tapes that contain the right words from Charlie, and 2-Bit will respond to you. One such tape is actually behind the locked door that we can jump into from the same station. Without anything else of note here, we take our findings and head back to the tunnels. For our last investigation this loop, we head to the complex. Here, Igor stays at night, ignoring Alexis's party in favor of getting work done. I identify with Igor. He's that important science guy that we heard the lecture from earlier. Juliana tells us that there's no way we can take out all the visionaries at once, and it's technically true, but this is where we start the strategy. Also, at this point, my friend thought it would be funny to invade me, so if you see a random Juliana running around, that'll be him. Igor comes over the intercom and tells us that he has a massive discovery and he can't wait to share it. Well, time to share with us, Igor. As we make our way around the map, we oops into the traps and are given a hint that if we proc any of the traps in the area, Igor will be alerted to our presence. He will then taunt us based on where we stepped on that trap. Wenji's area is currently off limits and the laser gun is off of its shelf, so that's unavailable to us as well. We eventually find Igor, who likes to pop in and out of invisibility. Taking him down lets us take his slab and learn about loop stress. The more visionaries we defeat in each loop, the better our loot will be, giving us more direct paths toward progression. We then end my friend's shenanigans, head back to the tunnels, and end this loop with much more information and some new powers under our belt. This brings us to around loop 5, and after spending some time reviewing the leads we have, which is a great way to give yourself goals, for this loop I settled on going for Harriet, a visionary we don't know much about yet. Harriet is in Hangar 2, as expected, but the hangar doesn't have much in the way of roof access, so after some mishaps, we finally reach her audience chamber. She seems to be doing some sort of ritual with the people here, and interrupting it was less than ideal for her. We get an objective marker to search her office, but are under attack the entire time as we try to push our way over there. Eventually, we get the killing blow on Harriet, picking up the Nexus slab in the process and gaining access to the office. We learn that she keeps a lot of dirt on the other visionaries, something that maybe we could put to good use. On her computer, we learn a few more secrets. Igor was the person who discovered Black Reef. This is mostly his fault. Harriet takes the LPP very seriously, and Juliana told the others that Colt is directly trying to break the loop, just to name a few of those tidbits. In addition to all of these, we can see from the post-mission screen that this was a great run for minor information. Rambling Frank does a fireworks show every evening, and the security for it should be in his club. He also threw away his slab, and it's supposedly somewhere in Carl's Bay. Then we get a cutscene. I know, this game actually has them. Every time we figure out a pivotal part of the end game plan, a cutscene will give us a recap of that information, further reinforcing it and giving us some really cool illustrations. These remind me of the illustrated cutscenes from Dishonored, and honestly I'm really glad that they make something of an appearance here. The cutscene confirms it. Harriet is only available in the morning, and the perfect plan will always start with her death. Up next is Fristad Rock. There is a lot there, but we don't know much about it. Fia the artist has a bunker here. It's past the 2-bit transmission post down the side of this cliff. There are a ton of Eternalists outside and inside as well. Fia herself is taking refuge in her private room at the bunker's center, next to a suspiciously large reactor. If discovered, an ominous alarm starts to ring. Me, being an absolute imbecile, didn't really pay attention to this. I saw the loot in front of me, and so I spent a long time picking things up. Yeah, I made it to the tunnels in time for the entire thing to explode, which ends your run permanently. So we didn't learn too much. We know that Fia lives there, but it's incredibly well defended, and we'll get back to her later. Let's try Fristad Rock again in the morning without fear of a giant reactor explosion. Frank also takes residence here, but not in a bunker. He lives in a club. Frank is a paranoid man and requires all people to have something called a class pass, something that removes all magic powers from slabs upon entering. This makes infiltration a much harder... Oh, okay, dead again. Okay, so we've learned a class pass makes Frank's club difficult. Noted. It removes our extra lives. Back to Fristad Rock again. It goes much better this time as we just blast our way room by room, because you can't get detected if there's no one to detect you. Frank is on the top floor in his recording studio, locked with some of his Eternalist friends. Up here is another class pass object that can remove it for us, meaning we are now superpowered. After waves and waves of Eternalist assaults, Frank finally exits the studio to attack us himself. It doesn't go well for him, and we can take his residuum. Afterward, we also get Frank's legendary weapon, the Constancy Automatic. It's an SMG with 2 clips, and you can shoot it while reloading the second clip, so it really never needs to stop shooting. Really fun weapon design. What we did not find was the codes to the fireworks, because again, I am an idiot who likes shiny loot and gets blinded by it. Okay, now for more info on Fia without exploding ourselves this time. Defeating Fia before the self-destruct sequence with a legendary supergun is much better. Here we get to experiment with the Havoc Slab, which increases our damage in a perfect run-and-gun way. So we've killed Fia, but haven't learned much. It was about at this point I realized there was no way to go about just killing all of them singularly. Unfortunately for us, I wanted more shiny things, so next on my list I wanted the laser gun from Wenji. Turns out, in order to get it, you have to bait the laser to hit the HALP so the glass breaks. The HALP, or HALP, has no ammo. It is a laser rifle with percents, and once it reaches 0, it has to recharge. It is strong.
Not you, some other one then.
Up next, let's learn some more about Mr. Dorsey, the wealthy benefactor of this group. Dorsey has an exceptionally large mansion that he resides in and is throwing quite a large party. Now, there are a lot of ways to find things out about him, watching for clues, sleuthing around, or using a laser gun. We pick up his slab and are gone, adding to our collection. The next few loops are what I call collectathon loops. This was testing things, making sure I had abilities and weapons I wanted. In these loops, we learned Dorsey really likes to mix music. Inputting that code here will draw Dorsey to dance in front of his guests, singling himself out for us. We also learned from Frank that Colt used to help him fix his fireworks. He doesn't know anything about fireworks, he just likes to play with them. But we do know that his shed is located behind Harriet's place in Carl's Bay. This could be something interesting. In fact, this gives us our solution for taking out Frank. But now that we know that, we can technically take out 2 people in the morning, Harriet directly and Frank indirectly through fireworks. This means we need to figure out Wenji, Igor, Fia, and Charlie. Juliana we'll deal with a little later. Dorsey we can just kill in the evening as he is the opposite of Harriet. All of our perfect loops have to end with Dorsey dying. Fia and Charlie are interesting. They are a couple, and so logic and a picture we found tells us that they meet somewhere near the shoreline on Fristed Rock. If we could locate that spot. Oh, it's just around the corner over here? Neat. Entering this hidden bunker, we come up to the strange machine. There are 4 screens and a series of analog tapes to click. Each of them are corresponded to what looks like a symbol and a number. Well, we can't get into the bunker proper without the combination. This means we need these numbers. The process to decode them must be very complicated, and there's a note for where the cipher is, including the combination to the safe. Great security, Charlie, to put the cipher next to the console we're trying to break into. We're making progress. Let's find out what the heck Igor is up to and what his amazing discovery has been. Heading to the array, we find Igor going berserk through the comms again, but our marker is not for him. His lab is what we're really here for. From these labs, we learned that we, Colt, co-founded Aeon with Igor. We also learned that Igor tapes what he thinks can be used to the radio towers to speak in the future. Igor also really wants to go to the party at the end of the day. The only problem is in order for him to want to go, the experiment has to have failed. His experiment controls are hidden, much like his power is, with a cloaking device. And with that discovery, we have now learned that we can shut down the listening device he is using to communicate with the future before evening time. That will force Igor to go to the party, lining him up with more of the visionaries. The plot thickens. That means we can now account for 4 of the visionaries, assuming we can deal with the fireworks. The cutscene confirms our suspicions. That means Igor will do nothing but go to the party later. Alright, next up, let's figure out this firework situation. When we visit in the afternoon, snow covers the ground and Harriet is nowhere to be found. The fireworks, however, are in a shed out back. It's locked with a code. There is a man named Otto from Updom that has it though, which makes him our next target. This loop, we also learned that Fia and Charlie's code is a sequence of art that she has in her studio. Their story cutscene confirms that once we find that, we are good to eliminate them. To end this information gathering festival loop, we look for Otto's workshop, which is in complete shambles. Maybe we can check back in the morning when things are less destroyed. This was one of the best loops we have done, and we're really narrowing in on our targets. We need to find Otto, find the code for Fia and Charlie, then figure out how to get Wenji to move. For those of you wondering, this has been 10 loops so far. It's very hard to not talk about this as a more experiential playthrough because loops are very subjective, so thanks for bearing with that as I kind of go over what we've been doing. I hope you've been keeping up with your notes as well. In loop 11, we wake up on the hunt for Otto's workshop. There's something going on in here. It appears that whatever Otto is up to, we need to dismantle the electrical boxes surrounding his stuff to get to the bottom of it. They are scattered around the area, but not too far out of the way. With the devices stopped, we can return to Otto's space later to find that code. For now, we're out of here. Returning basically immediately, we can find that the firework code is not here. Frank sent it via Carl's Bay cargo containers, so disappointed we still don't have the code, we head out for now. Next up, Wenji. We have the code to her lab, which means there has to be some sort of dirt in here that we can use to get her butt out of the complex and lined up with the other visionaries. We find a disturbing message from Fia and Charlie to Alexis that tells us Fia might have actually killed Charlie. Talk about bad breakups? Alexis, however, wants us to use Charlie's robot 2-bit to make an invitation, the first recorded use of ChatGPT to make an invitation to your relatives. Wenji is less than enthused about anything that is going on and refuses to communicate, especially relating to the party. We also learn that Juliana has a lair somewhere around the island of Black Reef, although we're not exactly sure where, and Wenji's goal right now is to go through some sort of door. Not quite sure what that means, but we'll keep an eye on it. We also learn that in the evening, all the Wenjis converge together into a singular being, meaning that if we want her to move somewhere, we want her to be moving at night. Again, not a very actionable loop, but we've learned a lot of things. Juliana doesn't want us in the power station, which means that's exactly where we want to be. We learn from Wenji's cutscene that she does not want to be at the party, confirming that's where we gotta get her. We spend a few more loops getting things ready, acquiring slabs, then we reset and get ever closer to what is going to end up being the perfect loop. Our next story-based loop, our two clear objectives are to find the power station and Fia's drawings. First up, power station. Located in the complex portion of the map, it is underneath the central building. The generators are currently offline, rendering the power station inert. It seems that we need to get this thing up and running again. There are 4 branches of the generators, and each of them needs a battery to get enough power to jump. Spread throughout the area are batteries and charging stations that we can use to turn on the generators and reroute the power to this HZN, or Horizon, station. These stations are from the previous expeditions of the island and hold quite a few secrets. Old plane diagrams, tech that is incredibly dated, and a ton of notes from the previous explorers of this area. We learn that we were a member of that crew. It seems that we were testing flights of rockets, which is rather bold of us to be honest, and also learn that another door we want access to will be available later in the day, so we will have to come back later. Next time we do this loop, we head to Updam, where we get to gloat to Juliana about our power success and make for 2-bit, someone we really need to have a conversation with. After clearing out the area, we can hack the door to 2-bit's little sanctuary. 2-bit is a talking robot with a piece of literal brain inside of it that is the manager for Charlie's game, and seemingly has control of a bunch of other things as well. It is conscious of our want to break the loop and claims that we might have even done it in the past. It seems Charlie has made 2-bit with a bioprocessor. This gives him the ability to remember things across loops. We ask 2-bit what he does, and he admits that he can broadcast to all of Black Reef, and if we find a recording of Alexis, 2-bit will edit that audio for us, as long as we don't kill Charlie. We could also use him to ignite the rocket in the center of Charlie's game, or to evacuate the building if that's what we want. Next, we need to go to Updam, where Juliana reveals that we are on the island for 17 years with Horizon before volunteering to come back with the Visionaries. Here we also learn that there is a passage called the RAK, or rack, that we can gain access to with a password called Wherewithal in Updam. We also learn that Juliana is hiding where we have been able to see her this whole time, in the middle of the giant loop called the Eye. It's all starting to come together. Let's go find a Dorsey audio recording. While there's no recording at the party, we do learn that there's something for us at the library that we can use for 2-bit. With that, we can check the RAK. Turns out the reason Juliana doesn't want us there is because that is a rocket, which could be our ticket to reaching her. Unfortunately, we need more than one password, and the various other Horizon locations will have those passwords. And in for another loop. In order to get into those Horizon areas, it's back to the power station for us. This time we give the power to Fristad Rock, somewhere we need to explore anyway for Fia's symbols. The entrance to Sova Station is conveniently placed right next to Fia's apartment, and has the same song and dance of finding more and more context for those that were here before. Some military operation, it seems, was sent here because of the strange properties. We also hear about some woman named Lila. We also learn that there was a pregnancy on the island, and given the strange anomalies here, they want to keep a close eye on that. given the strangeness and weirdness of this place. The pregnancy is from Colt and Lila Blake, who works at a car station. Wait, Lila Blake? That name seems familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, it seems Colt eventually got there too. You guys can add it to your notes that Colt is Juliana's father. We activate a door nearby and come face to face with one of those pictograms we're looking for. They're scattered throughout Fia's base, and we need to find 4 of them in particular. It takes quite a bit of running around to find them all, and I'm sure there's a better way to do it than what I was doing, which was just throwing myself around the building until I find them. With that, not only do we have a great fatherhood realization, we also now know another password that can get us into Charlie and Fia's hideaway. On our way to check out the hideout, Juliana reveals that yes, she has known this whole time she was our daughter, but won't tell us anything because it won't change the outcome of the loops much. We input the code into Charlie and Fia's console and can drop down into this love nest. There's no one here now as we've defeated Fia earlier this loop, but we quickly learn that this is the place we can flood to take the pair out together. The only problem is getting out ourselves, but as long as we keep our head, we should make it out in time. Another loop, we get to find another Horizon building. We have 2 down, that means we need 2 more. I'll spare you the power room details as it goes the same as the others, but we go to the Akar station, the one that Lila was posted at. Akar station is all the way off the edge of the map in Carl's Bay, and is quite the trek through Eternalist territory to reach. Once we reach it though, we open the door and come face to face with ourselves. This version of Colt was here for a recording, a tape of Lila. He doesn't take too kindly to us saying that we want to break the loop. We listen to the tape, which is a recording of Lila and Colt as they play a word game. During the game, Colt uses his own password, Vermilion. 3 down, 1 to go. We loop one more time, and with the batteries set to the Yasin station, we can now get our final password. But on our way through Updam, we also go to the library to find that recording of Alexis Dorsey. The recording takes the form of this little guy, the Runt. The Runt is loud, obnoxious, and absurdly annoying, just like Alexis then. We escort the Runt to 2-bit and then can use the sound clip from the Runt to make a spliced recording of Alexis that will tell Wenji that he can get into the door she's been trying to get into. From here, we can then inspire 2-bit to stop putting up with Charlie's crap and start thinking for himself. 2-bit really loves this, and we're treating him as an equal and promise to help him find some legs after this whole debacle is over. He then basically gives us eternal admin privileges, meaning we can always count on Wenji being at the party. With that in hand, we head to the last Horizon station. This one is filled with analog machinery, and the last password we need, shorthand. We can now get into the rack, but we run into another version of us. This one is out here to kill everyone on Black Reef, but does not know that the rocket itself will not activate unless 7 visionaries have died. This one seems to calm down, and we can inform him that it pays to be smarter and read about things. Now we know how to get to Juliana, and how to get to every single visionary, which means all of the minor paths have now confirmed, and we have made a perfect loop. The cutscene confirms that we now know exactly what we need to do. I spent a few more loops getting things ready, unlocking the legendary sniper rifle, farming guys until they drop silenced pistols, and with all of the prep work and infusing that we need done, we can head into the final loop. Now that we know the plan, it is time to execute. Step 1, Carl's Bay in the morning. This will let us deal with Harriet and Frank. Harriet and her little cult are in the hangar, and we already know how to deal with her. Next up is Frank's fireworks. Putting in the code we stole from Otto, we can jam the rain flaps, meaning that when Frank turns on his show, well, you'll just have to see. Leaving Carl's Bay, it's time to deal with Igor's experiment. You know how this one goes too. Go to the complex, clear the area, use the nullifier, input the code, boom. Igor is now going to the party tonight. Next up is Charlie and Fia. Both of them will be in the love nest in Kristad Rock, which means that's where we're off to. Fia and Charlie are in the middle of an argument where Fia seems less than interested in Charlie's attention. Once Fia and Charlie are both dealt with, it's time for the last area, and it's time for us to party. Juliana can see what we're up to and only asks that we hear her out when we reach her. She knows we're on the right track and even wishes us good luck at the party. She has no desire to stop us. On our way to the party, Frank sets off his fireworks and yeah, he seems to be having a great time. 3 to go. Wenji and Igor hang out together on the roof, and taking them out leaves one final visionary. Setting Alexis's mixtape on has him go to the main room as he always does. Using our newly acquired overpowered sniper rifle leaves us with no visionaries left. Time to head to the rocket and go see our daughter. Speaking all 4 Horizon passcodes, let's board the rocket, and here we go.
I lost this thing. Oh! Oh, okay.
Crash landing into Juliana's building, we can go down this long hallway. She says she is unarmed and implores us to hear her out. We reach an area where all slabs are nullified, and we approach as she shows us a pair of dueling pistols. Pistols that look very familiar. After arguing the merits of staying in the loop or breaking the loop, Juliana tells us that she can offer us answers that can basically transcend the known universe. From there, we each get a pistol and have to decide how to proceed, and there are a few things that we can do. Let's talk endings to this game. From what I can gather, there are 3 possible endings with Juliana's ultimatum. Option 1, we do not break the loop. We sit with Juliana and basically can use our meta-knowledge of the loop to play with it as gods for all eternity, father and daughter, going on sadistic murder sprees one day, and never needing to worry about things ever again. This ending is fine. I can see Colt's focus on family and finding Lila potentially bleeding into this option. And in my opinion, although there is an argument to be made for all the endings, this one is likely the worst of the 3. Option 2, we do what we came here to do and kill Juliana. Then we take the power for ourselves. We reset the loop having killed Juliana, arguably making up the most powerful being in the loop as we now know all of the secrets, and there is nothing she can do to stop us. This lets Colt replay the loop over and over again infinitely. Again, this ending is fine, but not the quote-unquote true ending. If anything, this ending tells us that Colt will continue the loop until he eventually does one of the other 2 endings. And finally, option 3, break the loop. Killing Juliana and then killing ourselves resets the day to normal, but everything looks different. The sky is marred with lights and energy flashes. As she's promised so long ago, Juliana is there for us, but she decides against killing us, teleporting away from the mess instead. This leaves Colt and the rest of the people on the island. The music plays, and we get a montage of all the things Colt does post-breaking the loop, which is considered the good or true ending of the game, as it's the only one that provides closure on Colt's initial goals and forward progression. It seems that Juliana and at least a few people still have knowledge or access to their slabs, and it kind of sets up future iterations of the franchise should Arcane wish to continue the storyline. All 3 endings are fun in their own way, and while time will tell, or not, I guess if the loop continues, what really happened here, I enjoyed them all. Let's do a story deep dive. That's a wrap on the story of Deathloop. It's actually really fun. The mystery noir style of storytelling where we steadily learn more and more about both the past and the present at the same time is a great way to build suspense and make the payoffs where we learn something, even if it's a small thing, feel really impactful. We start knowing nothing, and because our character also knows nothing and is fully voiced, he gets to express a lot of the worries and doubts that we also find. I will say the visionaries and most of the people other than Colt and Juliana don't really feel like fleshed out characters though. Most of what we learn from them are in journals or recordings or that kind of thing, which does give us the story of these people, but I don't feel like they're people. Like, I have no personal relationship with Alexis other than I love to shoot him every time I go through the loop. I know he specifically is designed to be hated, but I think I would have liked more to do with the other characters here. The lore for Black Reef is left pretty open, which makes sense given that this is a successor to the Dishonored franchise. The Outsider's death being an inciting event to create a time loop would be very intriguing to these people who wouldn't really know that knowledge. The other official tie-in we get is with the pistols that Juliana hands out. They are the same pistols that we see in Dishonored all the time. As far as story complexity goes, it's actually not as crazy as it makes itself out to be. It's a pretty straightforward story of Groundhog Day, where we just find out more and more things until eventually we get a whole picture. The fun part is that we get all of this revealed very slowly. I think narratively this game is fine. Above average, maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. I definitely have my gripes with it, but overall it's a fun story to play through. Let's talk mechanics and slabs real quick. Deathloop mostly shines in its gameplay loop. Stylistically, I would compare this game to an action FPS game with roguelike elements and a nice Dishonored backdrop. That's a lot of gaming jargon, which is great for buzzwords, but let's dive into that some more. FPS action RPG because, well, I think it's pretty evident. We play as Colt in the first person, and while stealth is always an option, it isn't required. The Dishonored backdrop, well, we get a suite of powers that include the best power known to mankind in Blink, and have to use it to kind of figure out what we want to do. It still has that immersive sim aspect to it. It's part roguelike, because after each loop we lose everything, except for what we pay with residuum, and have to start over from the beginning. This is typical of the genre. Things like Risk of Rain, Vampire Survivors, and Hades all do similar things. The gameplay is heavily reminiscent of Dishonored in how it feels. We have 2 hands, one for weapons, one for powers, or a second weapon, if dual wielding is available. It feels very fluid as always. Gunplay is smooth, and I rarely found myself missing shots I felt like I shouldn't. The large weapon pool and mods allow for a lot of experimentation and customization to your character. Want to run and gun? Great! There are weapons and mods that will allow you to shoot while sprinting, and basically reload instantly. Want to play stealth sniper? Cool. Here's a recoil reduction and accuracy increase as well as a sniper rifle. Want to abuse the hackermajig's power to the max? Great, here's a range and speed increase that trivializes hacking. You get the idea. The play diversity really encourages you to try different things each loop, and that replayability lets the game feel fresh, even though you're technically doing the same thing over and over again. This game's magic takes the form of slabs. There are 8 of them, one for each visionary except one special case. The order with which you collect them is different, as each one requires you to defeat their respective visionary and then use residuum to keep it. Defeating the visionary or finding the slab by any other means unlocks upgrades. Each slab has upgrades altering their usefulness or functionality, and you can have 2 of these upgrades equipped at any time. I find power descriptors boring, so I'm not gonna just go through every single thing that the game gives you, but I will say if you do play this for yourself, I encourage experimentation. Each slab and slab combo and slab upgrade, again, promote different experimentation in play, and that's something that is great in a game like this. As far as overall abilities go, this game has a lot of things we're familiar with from Dishonored, as well as a lot of new things that it's letting us play with. They've cleaned up their animations and otherwise changed, but the framework for most of the powers come from the Dishonored games anyway. Another mechanic I really want to address is the multiplayer aspect of this game. Deathloop multiplayer is interesting. While playing through the story as Cult, after Juliana invades you the first time, there's always a chance she will show up. This will, as far as I can tell, usually be by another player if you're in online mode. If not, it will be an AI-controlled version of Juliana. You can also turn off invasions altogether if that's your thing. It's a novel idea, getting to invade other people or being invaded. But the problem is that it immediately throws off your current objective from whatever you're doing to stay alive or escape. This leads to some very interesting interactions as the player hides, tries to kill, or tries to sneak away from Juliana. This can happen in some very inconvenient times, such as right as when you're infiltrating Charlie's base or when you're sneaking around at nighttime. For the purposes of trying it out, I left it on for a few loops. I was invaded every single time of day, and I found that a little frustrating actually. Fun on occasion, but frustrating overall. When Juliana invades, she can have a myriad of abilities and upgrades as she has her own progression tree. This means that every time Juliana invades, there's a chance you're getting someone new to the game, or an Omega level invader who eats Cult for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and midnight snack. The AI Juliana is rather exploitable. I found myself waiting in windows for her to go by and then destroying her without letting her get off so much of a shot. As a concept, cool. And I really wasn't looking for something like this in this game. And I wasn't doing something dire for the story, it was a fun little surprise. The saving grace here is the opt-out feature though. If, like me, you're here to play through the story and explore, get achievements, and really just not down to deal with other people, you can turn that off. I will say some of the most fun invasions though were when my friends decided to invade me rather than random people. Let's move on to this game's achievement list. Deathloop has some interesting achievements. As this is a game where you do the same levels over and over again, there's a lot of achievements that are focused on subtle tweaks, playstyles, or finding odd things in each place on Blackreef. Because this is a successor to the Dishonored franchise, we have the usual fare here. Killing people without being detected, or moving through while only killing the visionaries are in fact achievements in this game. There are achievements for killing each visionary individually, as well as finding out things that let you kill them in groups. There's not really side quests in the game per se, but Charlie does have some games scattered around the island that if you do net you an achievement, and they're relatively entertaining. Some highlight fun achievements for me are Forward Pain. This one sees us using the Nexus slab to transmit damage more than 20 meters. Birthday Suit sees us needing to do a run where we kill all of the mostly naked people in each map, which is just hilarious. There are also achievements for defeating visionaries in specific ways, such as Judgment Day, where you have to defeat Harriet with poison gas. I think my personal favorite is the achievement God of OSP. This one needs you to go into a map with an empty loadout, kill all the visionaries, leave the map, and then just be done. A very flesh and steel type achievement. There are many achievements in this game, 58 of them to be exact. I will say that unless you're looking at a guide or a list of achievements, a lot of these are probably not intuitive. It is a very fun completionist game if you're doing it, but it's not something I would find myself doing naturally. That being said, there's a lot of achievements that influence your style of play, which are my favorite type of achievements. As far as overall difficulty though, It's hard to gauge, as you can do a lot of these when you're heavily upgraded, but some of them, like the one we just talked about, do require you to be able to beat the game without upgrades. I will say overall, it's maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. Not including Juliana achievements, which require you to invade people, but I'll be honest, I just did that while invading a friend of mine. Again, I don't like online-only achievements, and that's just something I wanted to get done. I think that's about it. Let's wrap this game up. Deathloop is a treat. It is basically however much you want to put into it, that's what you'll get out. If you want to log in, say screw the story, and then just jam out some runs with your own challenges, you can do that and it's still going to be a great time. If you care about the story and getting every last little puzzle, you are more than welcome to pick through every map slowly and meticulously, which is what I ended up doing. It welcomes stealth and chaos playstyles alike, and the more you tailor your build to you, the more fun it's going to be. It is not a game without its flaws. The multiplayer, while again novel, is something I can't quite see myself turning on ever again. In fact, when I tried to invade others, my queue times were sometimes upwards of 40 minutes. I'm sure it was much better on the release for the game, but now I would say it's much more a single-player experience. The game's difficulty takes one of two modes. Everyone on the map is either literally John Wick running at you, or it's a cakewalk with not much in between. It feels a lot like Dishonored in that way. Some weapons and combinations feel vastly stronger than others in my opinion, and some of the slabs seem far inferior to others. There is an upgrade to Igor's slab where you stay invisible while shooting, and if you get a kill, you will get the mana back. Meaning if you're playing a stealth playthrough, with a silenced pistol for example, you can basically be invisible 100% of the time. The story is well done, if a little easy to predict at times, and while I found myself interested in the nature of the game, there's basically zero character depth for anyone other than Colt and Juliana. As with all mystery-style stories, the climax and realization are two of the parts that really can't miss for a good narrative. I think Deathloop misses on the realization, but hits on the climax. The Golden Loop, or Break the Loop ending, is a great cinematic ending. It wraps up what the Visionaries and Colt do, it destroys the loop, and leaves things open for continuation. The realization, learning about the loop, and learning about Colt and Juliana is cool, but it misses some of that narrative weight for me. The game does a good job of not feeling repetitive while literally only doing the same thing over and over again, which is important. Overall, I think the game is a solid B? No, wait, B+? B+. A few more things cleaned up here or there, it could definitely be an A for sure. Don't get me wrong, it's a great experience, well worth playing through. It was one of the shortest things I did for the series though, only longer than Death of the Outsider, but I think that brevity is also in its favor. Not all games need to be 100-hour monsters, with 10 sets of collectibles and radiant side quests. Some games can be short and sweet, and this one was very sweet. Also, because of this game's repetitive nature, if it was much longer than it was right now, I feel like it would have lost me. Well, thanks everyone for watching, I really appreciate your time. This is the shill part of the video. Deathloop was the last game I played for the first season's block. The next video you see on the channel will not be a new game, but will in fact be a wrap-up of all of these games, as well as a preview for what we're going to play in Season 2. I tried to give you a hint of things that you were going to see, but all the things I came up with would make it far too easy. Just know that there's some very long RPG games coming up, and I'm excited to share. Press whatever buttons you think this video deserves, write a comment for ideas, suggestions, agreements, civil disagreements, or simply to tell me your favorite order from McDonald's, whatever works for you. I'll see you guys next episode for the recap, where I'll go over everything we need going forward. Once again, this has been Retinoless. Thanks for watching the list. Have a great day.